You were born on a day when the sky was white with snow, back in 1866 in Sakai, Japan. Even as a kid, you felt like an outsider, distant from the trivial games of other children. Big questions about life and death were always echoing in your head. Growing up, you chose the path of a monk, donning the brown robes and becoming a Zen priest. But those days of chanting and striking the wooden fish in that peaceful temple couldn't quench the fire inside you. You pored over Buddhist scriptures translated from Chinese and felt a rising sense of helplessness. The words had been twisted, lost in translation, through so many versions that the original soul was gone. You believed that to touch the truth, you had to find the original texts, something Japan completely lacked at the time. And so, in your 30s, you made a crazy decision. You were going to Tibet, the roof of the world, a forbidden land where no Japanese person had ever set foot and returned alive. You left your homeland behind. Your first stop wasn't Tibet, but India. You spent years in Darjeeling, forcing yourself to live like a local. You learned the Tibetan language, trained yourself to eat dry barley flour, and drank yak butter tea so salty it numbed your tongue. You knew Tibet was a fortress back then. Any outsider caught there would be executed on the spot. You looked in the mirror. This East Asian face was your only shield. You decided to kill off your Japanese identity. From then on, you would be a Chinese monk. At the time, Tibetans deeply respected monks from China. You practiced walking with a slow, calm gait. You practiced speaking Chinese with a slight accent. And most importantly, you practiced swallowing your fear. In 1897, you began your gamble with death. You didn't dare take the main roads for fear of military checkpoints. Instead, you took a detour through Nepal, climbing the most treacherous passes of the Himalayas, places where only eagles and mountain goats dared to roam. You're at an altitude of over 5,000 meters. The air is so thin that every breath feels like your lungs are about to explode. Your chest aches as if someone is crushing it. The blizzard lashes your face like shards of ice. Your thin cloth shoes are torn to shreds. Your toes go numb, losing all sensation before turning a bruised purple. You had to sleep in caves as cold as tombs, drinking melted ice and chewing on roots just to survive the day. One afternoon, while trudging through the wilderness, you ran into every traveler's worst nightmare: bandits. 3 men, huge as bears with scarred, ferocious faces, jumped out with long blades. They screamed at you, pressing cold steel against your throat. They wanted your money and your life. In that split second, instead of shaking or running, a strange calm washed over you. You slowly sat down on a rock and looked the bloodthirsty leader straight in the eye. You spoke in a voice so steady it was haunting. You told them you were just a poor monk searching for truth, and all you owned was your faith. You opened your bag and handed them the tiny bit of food you had left. Your eerie calmness baffled them. In the local culture, they believed only a saint or a madman would be that unafraid of death. They whispered among themselves and finally took the food and walked away, leaving you alone in the snow, but alive. That was the first time you felt you'd won a bet against fate. After all that hardship, the majestic Patala Palace with its shimmering golden roofs finally appeared. Lhasa, the land of the gods. But as you stepped into the city, your dream of a pure paradise began to crack. The smell hit you first. The stench of yak butter mixed with sewage and the scent of bodies that hadn't bathed in years. You were shocked by the lack of hygiene. The locals, even many monks, rarely washed. Their thick robes were nests for thousands of lice. Being a clean, conscious Japanese man, you had to sneak out to the river at night to wash up, just so no one would suspect you. This is where you began the greatest performance of your life. You claimed to be a Chinese great master on a pilgrimage. Ironically, what made you famous wasn't your preaching, it was your medical skills. In reality, you weren't a doctor. You just knew basic Western hygiene. But in Tibet back then, people treated illness with spells, ash water, or bizarre potions. When you saw a patient with a festering wound, you simply cleaned it with boiled water, bandaged it, and gave them basic painkillers. The results were like magic. Word spread like wildfire. They started calling you a divine physician. From beggars in rags to wealthy nobles, Everyone knelt at your door begging for medicine. The climax was when you were summoned to the palace to treat the 13th Dalai Lama, the supreme ruler of Tibet. You knelt before him trembling, cold sweat soaking your back. You knew that one tiny mistake, one wrong word, or one gesture that didn't seem Chinese would mean your head would roll instantly. But you succeeded. Curing the Dalai Lama opened the doors to the secret royal libraries. You spent your days feverishly reading, copying, and collecting the precious original scriptures you had dreamed of. During your time in Lhasa, you weren't just looking for books. You were observing society like a researcher. You shuddered as you recorded the strange customs, brothers in one family sharing a single wife, or brutal punishments like gouging out eyes. You realized Tibet wasn't the mystical utopia people imagined. It was a raw, human society full of pain and grit. But a needle can't stay hidden in a bag forever. Your advanced medical knowledge and your slightly different bone structure started to make people suspicious. Rumors spread like a forest fire. That Chinese monk is actually a Japanese spy. The net was closing in on you. One stormy night, a close friend snuck in to warn you. The arrest warrant has been signed. You have to leave now, or by tomorrow morning your head will be hanging on the city gates. You looked at your room, filled with scriptures and statues you'd risked everything to collect. You couldn't take it all. You gritted your teeth, grabbed the most precious items and slipped away into the pitch-black night. The barking of dogs echoed through the alleys. The hunt had begun. The escape was even more intense than the journey in. You had to dodge checkpoints and scramble through slippery mountain passes. Behind you was the constant terror of pursuit. The sound of galloping horses felt like it was always right at your heels. And worse than the fear was the guilt. You knew that once you were gone, the Tibetan friends who helped you would pay the price. They would be thrown in prison and brutally tortured for harboring a spy. That pain would haunt you for the rest of your life. You returned to Japan carrying thousands of texts and stories that seemed impossible. The world hailed you as a great explorer. But in the dead of night, sitting alone in your study, you still shiver. You remember the bone-chilling winds of the Himalayas and the grateful eyes of the poor people you treated. You remember the screams of the friends who suffered because of you. In the end, you understood. Truth doesn't live in some far-off mystical land. It lives in the act of risking everything and understanding human suffering. You reached the place you needed to go, but a piece of your soul stayed behind on those snowy peaks forever.